Yes, we're good
So
to
we're
go.
all good to go. Let me call the. Okay, Jason, thank you. You're right on time. Thank you. Let me call the meeting of the Environmental Advisory Committee meeting to order. I'll do the land acknowledgement first. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the lands and the waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923, a shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services? Peter? Second? Great. Thank you. Jason? All in favor? Super. Anybody have any comments or questions on the agenda before we move? If they have any new business or anything you'd like to add on, just please do it on your new business at the end of the meeting. Yeah. Okay. Any declarations of pecuniary interest on any of the items or the item that we have before us? Seeing none, we'll move along. The next is the receipt of the minutes of May 12th. I suppose everybody has had a chance to read them. Can I have a motion to receive the minutes of that meeting, May 12th? Okay. Any comments on the minutes? Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Yeah. Super. Okay. We don't have any delegations tonight, but we do have matter for consideration, which is a memorandum from the Analyst Energy Climate Change regarding the overview of the town's corporate energy management system. And that would be Will. Can I have a mover and seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry, we don't go favor yet. Have to have a presentation, not just a receipt. Yeah. Sorry. Well, we have a presentation, and so I assume you're ready to go. Of course, we'll have comments, questions of Will afterwards.
Okay. Looks like my slides are working. So hello, everyone. Excited to be here as always. So I'm the Analyst in Energy and Climate Change. My name is Will Stover. My role here at the town is to take accounting for all of our utility budgeting, general greenhouse gas emissions accounting. And so today we're going to be doing an overview of the corporate energy management system. So how we look at our corporate assets and track their progress and changes. So if we look at the agenda today, just some clarification, the slides that were sent out. The content's the same. I've just added a couple more for animation and viewing pleasure purposes. So the agenda today, we're going to go over our energy conservation and demand management plan, explain what that is, how we've evaluated it. We're going to look at Red Screen Expert, which is our main software used to track emissions and utility consumption, also building performance. We'll get into that. I would like to show you guys the electric vehicle charging and what we've seen with that recently, and some further discussion points at the end for all of you. So our energy conservation demand management plan looks at our corporate emissions. I also just wanted to put up our community emission targets. Our corporate one from 2018, we want 50% reduction in emissions by 2035. That's our current goal, with a final goal of net zero energy by 2050, which means we are using as much energy and carbon as we are saving, or we're trying to balance the scale. In the community, we have 80% by 2050, just as a comparison. So what is in the Energy Conservation Demand Management Plan? We've had 5 asset types broken up for ease of accessibility and hitting our targets. So we've separated it to buildings, fleet, public lighting, waste, and water and wastewater. So here are some examples of what are in each of those asset types. The buildings are pretty self-explanatory: town hall, town square, our community center. This can be our joint operations center as well. Anything the town of Aurora owns, we have to look after that. Our fleet, we have light duty vehicles, heavy duty, and equipment. So light duties are cars, light pickup trucks. Heavy duties might be snow plows, heavier equipment, diesel. Then our equipment is ATVs or chainsaws and smaller things. We still need to account for them. Public lighting, we have park lights, street lights, and traffic lights. We look at our garbage and corporate waste and our water and wastewater pumping stations. Although York Region handles the larger portions of it, we still need to pump the water and use boosting stations. So where did the Energy Conservation Demand Management Plan come from? Or I will refer to it moving forward as the ECDMP. It's a little easier to say. So we actually follow Partners for Climate Change or Climate Protection, which is a Federation of Canadian Municipalities initiative put together to help municipalities organize their milestones and goal setting. So what do those milestones look like? Milestone 1 is creating an inventory. Milestone 2 is setting a target. Milestone 3 is developing a plan for those targets. Milestone 4 is implementing that plan. And milestone 5 is monitoring the impact, which is largely what we will get into later. So for reference, I've thrown out the community and the corporate side. So for the community, and this is a submission, this doesn't mean we haven't completed these things. This is just kind of showing you where we're at with our recognition for the town. So our community, the Partnership for Climate Protection has recognized 4 of our milestones submitted. In our corporate one, we received confirmation of milestone 1 and 2. And I submitted milestone 3 last week and it's under review right now. And then milestone 5 for the community and 4, these are ongoing things that we will continually be doing as we progress. So reflection again, milestone 1, we've identified our inventory. We looked at what we have right now. We've set the targets through council and other initiatives. We've developed a plan of how to execute that within each of these asset types. And the implementation of monitoring is a lot in red screen, which I will show you how we do that. This is also an Ontario regulation to report these through an ECDMP. It also comes with annual progress reports, which we submit yearly to the Ontario government on our energy consumption. This is submitted through Energy Star Portfolio Manager. The ECDMP needs to be completed every 5 years. The town of Aurora did its first one in 2014. We've done one in 2019 and the most recent version in 2024. The next one will come out in 2029. There's also a reference for community tracking. I just wanted to mention this. We currently don't have internal staff fully tracking our community emissions. The Toronto Atmospheric Fund does our tracking for us right now, and we're providing them as much information as we can to populate from 2018 to 2023. Similar to how we report to you guys at the end of the 2024 year on 2023, we won't see our 2024 emissions until November this year. This is also broken down into our transportation industry, and in Aurora, we have a smaller amount of industries. It's a little harder to track, but we're trying to provide them as much information as we can as the town to move forward. So our current corporate results from 2019 to 2024, we've seen a 2% reduction in electricity, 30% reduction in natural gas use, and our greenhouse gas reduction by 20%. I just want to flag that there has been an increase in square footage, so we got to keep in mind a reference point comparing apples to apples. You start expanding your square footage and energy use, you're going to see an increase in energy consumption, but overall we've managed to still reduce our emissions. So other related plans that are notable, we had our 2019 Green Fleet Action Plan, which looks at electrifying a lot of our fleet. our climate adaptation plan in 2022, and our natural capital asset management plan in 2024, which looks at a lot of our green spaces and starting to look into our carbon sequestration, which is how we can store carbon in our wetlands, trees, etc. There's a quick look at what they look like, and they're all on our website, accessible for the public and yourselves. So now we get into the fun stuff, which is my favorite part of my job, is looking at all of this data and what we can pull from it and analyze it. So Red Screen Portfolio is a Natural Resources Canada software used around the world. Many people like it for its multiple purposes. It's very similar to our energy conservation demand management plan, where we want to benchmark, look at the feasibility and the energy consumption. We can assess risk and finance and look at the performance and analytics of our facilities or any other fleet, wastewater, natural capital assets. I'd like to say, if there are any questions, Chair, is that okay if people want to just ask during the presentation?
It's up to you if you want, if any of the group, because it's complicated and it moves along for this, so if you want to stop periodically and ask questions or not, because I'm having to write things down.
I'm okay with that too.
So before we move to reds, then anybody have any question about the previous slides, looking at the inventory and all the other intents?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No. Okay. Through the chair. Thanks. I'm a data person myself, so I'm looking at the numbers and thinking, I'd love to delve into these some more.
Yep.
I also recognize kind of like the monitoring aspect of it and the idea of public accessibility and open source. I'm wondering if some of the charts where it kind of compares to other regions, right, or the progress reports that you mentioned were part of the, is there a place that we'd be able to find them publicly outside of this presentation?
Through you, Chair, yeah. There's so the Toronto Atmospheric Fund is a totally public database, and you would really enjoy that. Actually, if you go online, you can download the inventory, and so it's from Hamilton all around the Golden Horseshoe, York region, and you can go into each region. It even gives us public transportation numbers, tracks those as well. So that's a great source that we've been using to analyze the town of Aurora's consumption.
So I guess through the chair, if it's possible, if those links could be included in the minutes of this presentation, that might be helpful.
Awesome.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Or wait, can I send the file? I can send that back to you. I'll send you the inventory directly.
Mr. Chair, yes, that can be forwarded by staff directly to members of the
Great.
To the chair, I guess we can come back to this. You had mentioned about the store carbon in trees. And I guess that was part of the presentation where they were talking about the tree canopy and where they want to go.
Yep.
I guess is that part of your portfolio?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, as we start to reduce our emissions, we can only do so much to eliminate our carbon emissions.
Right.
So I'm saying emissions a lot. So then that next phase is renewable energies, solar power, wind, carbon credits. We can purchase energy production. Another phase of that is stored carbon, and it's kind of it could be considered carbon neutral. There's a little back and forth in the industry if that's considered feasible or not, if we can include that. In the coming years, I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about if that's a practical solution, but we are starting to look at our mature tree canopies. Wetlands are a big one too. With the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority, they've started looking at the wetland as all the reeds and wetland plants store their carbon in grass. There's still some in grass too. I always forget about that. So that's just we're flagging it. We recognize that it is
Another,
It was just a follow-up.
let's have a follow-up now, and then I'll go to Angela.
Okay. I'm just curious where the town is on that, being that a number of mature trees have been cut down. And the projected ones that of the canopy, keeping the canopy, they seem to actually be reducing that mature canopy recent development.
Yep.
So that's my concern, because in order to grow trees, it takes 25 years before they actually catch carbon. Yeah, so I'm just curious how.
Yeah, we're very proud of the canopy and
Yeah.
what we had, and we're a little concerned about what's happening to it at various developments around town with the development, so I guess that's just a comment about carbon capture.
For you, that's not my expertise area, but it's in the natural capital asset plan.
Okay.
We can definitely find something for you guys and pass on some more information.
Angela?
You were mentioning like wetlands and sensitive areas and things like that for carbon capture. With the new Bill C5 that's coming in, isn't that kind of counteractive to like what you guys are trying to accomplish when Doug Ford says, oh, go ahead and build wherever you want type thing now?
We're watching the news constantly. We're keeping an eye on that because it is definitely a concern. And this isn't my field to look at, but everyone's kind of shocked, I think, in the municipal setting that we're trying to do one thing and the province can come in and change it. So we're definitely keeping an eye on that.
So so if they want, say a developer want to come in and build on an EP zone, and the province said, don't go ahead, would you guys have any recourse?
I would have to go back to you on that.
Okay, I'm just wondering if that's included in your
It's a little
whole.
new coming.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe we can have a little discussion about Bill 5 at the end, because it's
Yeah.
not really
Yeah, I'm the energy.
Will's area of expertise,
Right.
but I'm of the same opinion that Bill 5 is not what we need to have, and we need to have an opposition to it, and we can talk about that maybe in the business. So it belongs in the environmental area, but not necessarily today's topic.
No, it's just when you're talking about
Yeah.
carbon capture and things like that, and wetlands and tree canopies.
Sure. Anybody else have something you want to add before we move on? Yeah, Vince?
Oh, sorry, am I going? No.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
sentence. And first sentence.
On slide 8, the one that's 2019 to 2024, current results. Can you just talk briefly about how those results were achieved over the course of those 5 years?
These months.
Yeah.
So they're in our, and if you read our energy, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, our energy conservation demand management plan, it breaks down by the asset types or facilities. It identifies which projects are reducing X amount of greenhouse gas emissions or kilowatts or whatever the energy it's used. I started in end of last year, so I haven't been following those projects, but they're all tracked and monitored through RedScreen or our incentives. We need to audit beforehand to measure and verify those results. And then these are also based through our utility bills and the RedScreen tracking, which I'll show later. We can track the progress through those. It's broken down pretty well based on projects, and moving forward, it's given us a blueprint which projects we can do to try and reduce X amount of greenhouse gas emissions. So answer your question. It's been a variety of different projects.
Okay. Sounds like I should wait for the red screen.
You'll see some, yeah, I get into it.
Dennis?
So through the chair, not to talk about C Bill 5, but to kind of reframe into this conversation. I guess one thing I might ask is kind of like thinking about the plan with the monitoring results, where we are, and how robust is the plan to other external factors, not saying C5 directly, but maybe C5 being a good example. Might be something that if you're going to cover in the next few slides, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, if I could mention too, like recently the carbon tax has been cut from our utility bills.
Yeah.
So that is a 30% decrease in our costs. It doesn't change, but there's so many factors that can suddenly change us politically. So that's a great question, I think, for new business we could talk about.
Sure enough, we'll talk about it. So, anybody else have a question? If I may, where are we on our plan? I mean, you've got some reductions here, electricity and natural gas and some other things, but where are we with respect to the plan to 2050? Is there a graph somewhere that's going to show where we are?
I'll show you a good kind of look at what we're looking at, but the next target is our 2035.
Right.
So we're making fair progress.
Yeah, I think people would like to hear, the council would like to hear where we are from a visual saying, we're on track, we're on plan, we're falling below. The other thing, thinking about the politics of this too, is that we have been making some strides over the last little while, and it'd be interesting to see the effect of the provincial government and C5 and any other thing that happens in the next 20 years that can affect us. And I think should be captured in our metrics. That's
One of my discussion points at the end is how can we best present our results to council? Because we've been presenting to the group, but I think finding the best way to show the work that's been going on and where we are at. Great. So that'll be
encourage these folks here to be able to say, here's what matters. So, thanks. Can we move along now? Well, great, thanks.
Yeah, so how do we monitor and track this progress or lack of progress if there is some? It's red screen portfolio. So sorry, I gave this overview. This is benchmarking. What do we have? What are we working with? Where are we going? So the 5 asset types from the Conservation Demand Management Plan, but we've also included natural capital assets where we'd like to go. So to explain red screen, I thought I had this. Here we go. Red screen is broken down into individual files. So each building, for example, has its own file, which I can then go in and analyze. So I'm going to back up. So red screen organizes all of our files in individual buildings or fleet trucks and types and puts it into a portfolio, which is the box I've illustrated on the right, which I can then pull information from for reporting, performance analysis, optimization, budgeting, and planning. So I've thrown in some examples here. So any electricity invoices, natural gas, they all come in, fuel use, pump station energy, and I can extract from that different emissions tracking, building performance, and benchmarking. This is also part of the regulation. When we do our submissions, I pull all the building consumption and submit from red screen to building portfolio management. So here's my example. The buildings can be grouped and filtered, which I'll explain the filtering portion after. So each one's individual. Talking a little too much. So we have basically all of our buildings, we have the 29 files, and we can sort through each file type and look at the groupings together of the asset types. For example, if I clicked on the building filter, it breaks down each of our facilities in their own individual folder, facility size, energy consumption. For example, if I was to click on the Joint Operations Center, we could go into that and look at just the Joint Operations Center natural gas consumption. I've simplified this graph to 3 years of gas consumption. So we have 2022 in the blue, 23 in the green, 2024 in the red, and it's broken down. Each column is a month. So in the winter, we use the most natural gas. In the summer, there's a little bit for domestic hot water, and we do have a generator running at the Joint Operations Center. So for testing. And this doesn't tell you everything. You might wonder, well, why in 2024 are we using more gas than in 2023? But we do have to compare that to the type of weather we are facing. And we can do that using heating degree days, which indicates how many days of that month did we need to heat. If it was below 16 degrees, that's our threshold we used. So here we can see that we had more heating degree days in 2022 and we had more consumption. So this adds up. This is how we can verify the performance of the building and make sure that they are operating within what we're anticipating them to. Here's another example of the public library, and I'm sorry the months are a little small, but it is January down to December. This time I pulled 5 years. We have 2019 all the way to 2024. And I wanted to show that this is how we can verify something's clearly not going right to us, but we do understand there was construction going on, so a lot more electricity consumption. But it's very obvious when these differences occur. And then based on that construction, we now have more square footage in the library. We have that walkway now, so we've now had to start consuming a little more electricity to condition that space. So we can see 2022, 3, and 4 are now a little bit higher each month. And here's an example of how we can verify if a project saved natural gas or electricity. This is for the town hall. So each of these dots is a month or a utility bill that's come in. With our building models, we can predict how much we would have used, which is the blue line at the top, is the baseline up to this red line. And then we transition to what's anticipated, what red screen is anticipating we would use. Then based on our LED installation happening just before this red line, we're now saving money each month. So the green is the actual consumption, which there's now a little gap of savings, and we can recognize the cost avoidance that year and the kilowatt hours saved. Taking this a little farther, we can look at a cumulative sum analysis, which is a sum added each month on top of each other. If it's costing us more, the line goes up. If it's saving us, it'll go down. And we can see after the LED installation, the line just continues to go down. So we know this is a very valid project. Moving back up to the portfolio view of the buildings, these are one of my favorite graphs. We're going to see all of the facilities. It's a very busy graph, very colorful, but we can see this is our entire corporate portfolio of facilities, and we can track the entire natural gas consumption. We have our 2018 baseline, and each year following, 2020 was a little lower facility use. And then we picked up some additions such as the Aurora Sports Dome in the orange. So again, the graph doesn't look like it's trending completely downwards, but we are reducing overall with an equivalent square footage. And here's our greenhouse gas emissions. And one thing I would like to note is even our square footage has gone up, but the Ontario electricity grid has also increased their greenhouse gas emissions per kilowatt hour produced. If that makes sense. It used to be extremely clean, and we're still very clean compared to other states and provinces. However, it has gone up slightly, that emissions factor. So that's also driving it up slightly. And our utility costs have slowly, I would say, maintained for the most part. Again, as we add more square footage and we're consuming more, it's inevitable we are going to be spending more. I look forward to taking a look at this next year with the reduction of the carbon tax and see where the utility costs end up. So red screen, and what does the future look like for the town of Aurora, and where do we like to see it going? So currently we are very heavy on our buildings. We have all of our data in our buildings with some wastewater and public lighting in place. Again, we track it, we just haven't really solidified it yet. So by 2026, I hope to have that completely solidified and operational. By 2027, we hope to incorporate fleet, waste, and natural capital assets. We already have been testing and experimenting the best way to accommodate those asset types. Yep.
Chair, can you just explain that a little bit more? What you're trying to do, what are you doing with the fleet? Yes.
Yeah, so right now we're working with fleet on how are they structured, how are they tracking their different types of trucks and fuel, and how they track their fuel consumption, because they have their own software they use. If someone comes in, they tag, they fill the gas. So they know truck 122 used this much gas. It's in a database somewhere. I need to find a way to get that data and put it in red screen. So we're just playing around with the best template and kind of standard operating procedure. So we have the data, we just haven't ran with it yet fully.
So what are you going to do with that data? That's, what is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So then when I showed sorry, we're going to say something. So when you see the greenhouse gas emission portfolio view with all of our stuff, I hope to include fleet emissions. So if they use this much gasoline, we know they emitted this many tons of carbon, and we can add everything together in one graph through red screen. Does that answer your question?
it is what is the outcome? In other words, if you find out, okay, we're using way too much, and we're emitting way too much, is there going to be a change to the type of fleet you're going to have or looking into? That I'm just trying to see where you can get this data and what are you going to do with it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, we have the green fleet plan coming, or it's come out. So the fleet has their own operation and procedures they need to deal with, and they're responsible for that. I don't know the full details. We have to look if they're electrifying. We then need to work with facilities to electrify our facilities to accommodate the fleets. There's a ton of moving parts. This is mostly just for the reporting portion. And we can report back to them or council or whoever if they need to electrify. We have the data to back. They don't track their emissions, they track how much gas they use. And it's a very small portion compared to the facilities. That's where we would go with that.
So if I may interject, really what you are right now, you're measuring. You're not really evaluating or interpreting. You've got to do the measurements well and then display it in a way that it's per capita, per square foot, per vehicle, or something, but you haven't gotten to that evaluative, interpretive section yet. Or are we going to see something?
Oh, that's it. The review for the buildings, once we've gotten energy audits and we do building condition assessments. Next year, we're doing another round of energy audits, which then we can take the audits and use Red Screen to identify the best projects. So if we're replacing a boiler, I can model that and determine how much energy we're saving, how much greenhouse gases we're saving. We can do the financials, net present value. That's kind of procurement finance stuff. But I'm just showing you the portfolio level right now, but we're looking to expand it even more, which is these other 6 sections.
Dennis?
Through you, Chair. Kind of picking up, I'm looking at the graphs. I think they're great. From my experience, it looks like it's just kind of like the built-in graphs from that screen. And the chair's comment about how it's what's being reported, absolutely, it's great information, but the ability to change it to a rate to compare apples to apples, either through per hectare, per vehicle, those types of things. Does the software have that capability to make that apples to apples comparison across rates? Or do you anticipate that would be something that you'd have to take that information and then kind of process it in something else to come up with that type of comparison?
Right.
Yeah, I know you can, there's the equivalent kilowatt. There's a lot you can do in that screen I might not have done yet. But one of our discussion points later, and I think this is great that we're talking about the best way to present the data, is exactly that, and apples to apples, because sports facilities, for example, use a lot more electricity or energy than a town hall, right? Like the rinks and pools, it's a whole other type of, it looks so expensive, and I mean it is, but it's also accommodating our public facilities. And pools and rinks are just one of those things you need to have in a great community, right? So being able to filter those out and show people what's actually saving energy and what's performing well, I think that would be a great step.
Any other things? Anyone else? Well,
Yeah, so this is where we'd like to see it going, just expanding it to encompass all things within the corporation. I've already kind of talked about this again with the fleet stuff. There's trip optimization we could start looking at as well. Bill verification. Yeah. So I did want to just briefly go over our electric vehicle chargers. I don't know if you guys heard, but we did have a free charging week sponsored by McAlpine Ford for Earth Week, which was very successful. We saw some of the most consumption and new users. So there's a huge want for electric vehicles in the community. So we just want to show some of that data from 2022 to 2024. Some background, and these are data graphs, but these are the best ones I could find, was the electric vehicle sales, and I can put in the source addresses here as well. I can put those in the minutes. So electric vehicle sales in Canada are very quickly climbing up. Even if you think back, 2016 didn't seem that long. I mean, it's almost 10 years now. We didn't see that many electric vehicles, and now we're selling over 300,000 a year. And most of those are in Ontario and Quebec. So here's an overview. Here's an overview of the chargers at each site from 2023 to end of April. So there's a large increase. We did have some go down that we repaired, or we would have seen some more consumption. And we also recently just put one in at Aurora Town Square.
Yes, these aren't free, these chargers, like,
Yeah, they caught.
so is it with the ones that you, I forgot what they call the chargers at the gas stations, are they equivalent to that? Like, can you go on the same pay system that you do for those?
So they're currently $2.50 an hour. That Earth Week was a free week, just as a publicity
Okay,
engagement opportunity to see how many people would do it. That was only 1 week; it was free. So we're currently running at $2.50 an hour. Compared to the region and other municipalities around, it's kind of on par. Some are cheaper at $2 an hour, and then they'll kick in an idle fee if you leave your car there and it's not charging. Then it'll bump to $4 and sometimes $6. So we just leave it at a flat $2.50. And part of the Earth Week was to see if lower or no cost would see more users, because there is a complaint that it is maybe too much, but we're not trying to make money with it. We're trying to engage with the community. Part of our community energy plan leans heavily on electric vehicle uptake. So if we can support that as best we can, that's our intent behind it.
the only reason I say, like, we have an electric car, but we have the charger at the house too, so just wondering what the price change is, that's.
Yeah, and there's level ones, which are like your home, kind of very low voltage. Level twos, which we have. We've looked at level threes, but they're extremely expensive to install because you need to adjust your capacity at the facility, right? It's a very expensive upgrade. That would be ideal, but it's a longer term discussion for sure. Because some people don't think the 2 is fast enough. Yeah.
And that's when you go upgrade, you're going to the speedier charge.
People
Are on the road. If you may put yours overnight, then that's okay by you, but if you're out somewhere and you need to have a charge, you need to have a charge pretty quick, and that's more expensive, correct?
Yeah.
To install. And I think when you're talking about presenting this, I mean, these folks here may not be as concerned about it as council would, but we would be interested in those costs and the cost recovery and where we fit on all of that. So that, because I haven't seen any dollars and cents in this, but that's going to be important there, I think.
Sure.
I guess what I was wondering is how these chargers work, if it's still, like, we have an app that if we go to, it goes to this app of this company and it just pays automatically. Is this separate to, whatever it's called?
It's
It's to the town.
So the money comes back to us. It's Ivy. I'm not sure. I don't have an electric car myself. I think you have charge point or some other apps you can use.
Oh,
But this is specifically an Ivy brand,
okay.
which is popular. It's on the on routes on the highways. They have their fast chargers there. So that's what the town went with in 2019. I think we got our first ones, and then they've been upgraded since.
So, okay, so then it does go to Ivy. The money goes to Ivy and then they take some money and you get some money.
Yes. My understanding is we get all the money. We pay a separate maintenance contract for all of that stuff. There's a credit card fee or whatever for doing business, and then we get the remaining balance. So that goes to paying the electricity costs and the maintenance contract with them.
But the town's view right at the moment is that this is a cost recovery for both capital costs as well as operating costs that flow through to us for our residents from a taxpayer standpoint. This isn't the purpose of this.
Yeah.
It's about the economy of doing this. It's about the utility of doing it and what you're up to. So,
Sorry, through the chair, so kind of thinking about the data, thinking about who's using it and how that might be useful information to kind of like support future decision making. I know that IB administers the program. I'm wondering if there would be the opportunity to work with IB to kind of get an idea of what parts of Aurora people are using, coming from to use the public things. Is it like only people in town square that are using the ones in town park, right? Are they coming from further afield? The idea, or would that kind of break the whole idea of privacy with regards to adding geography and where they are coming from?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you'll like the next slides I've showed because I'm trying to do the same thing.
Okay, awesome.
Well, it's not quite the geography stuff, but we're trying to identify how do we recognize when we need to expand the program. Do we look at between 8 in the morning to 4 at night, or 8 in the morning till 8 at night for the utilization rates? Because overnight, people still use them overnight. Obviously, not surprisingly, I guess, but if you consider the full 24 hours, that utilization rate looks a little different versus 2 of 2 are taken up during the day. Okay, we need to start expanding a bit for more use. So if I go to the next slides, one thing I did do is try and look at the time of use data. So I just wanted to see, for the community center, or the rec and leisure facilities, are people coming up, so for the SARC, for example, are people coming in for their morning swim and plugging in the morning, and then they return at night for hockey? So I think the SARC in particular, we do see a lot of outside traffic coming in for hockey tournaments, hockey games. They'll plug in, leave it while their kids are playing or they're playing. The Armory is kind of a pretty well-rounded and heavy after work scene. And then the JOC is a lot of staff, we believe, because it's not as accessible to the public. It's still a public accessible charger, but staff coming in the morning and plugging in. The AFLC, same thing. We have the morning, swimmers or exercisers plugging in. We've still seen a year-over-year increase of use. There's so much data. I agree totally with the types of users. How many unique users do we have? That kind of stuff.
That's for sure. Kind of thinking about it, how do you present all of this data to people and stuff? I feel like I've seen examples where user profiles have been kind of dreamt up to kind of say, based on the energy usage, based on other information, the typical user might look like this. And that might be an effective way to kind of communicate who's using what type, as well as the profiles that are not using it that might benefit to help with that communication.
Yeah, I think Janice presented with the retrofit program, the types to use that. Didn't she present that? So I think that's that's a very good
Study.
for sure.
the other thing that I'm thinking of also is comparatives. I mean, we're working with this in our town. What's the comparator to Newmarket, Richmond Hill, Vaughan, Uxbridge, et cetera, the Northern Six in particular, because we're more like them than the Southern group. So presenting the data, I know someone will say, well, are we better than, equal to, less than others? And are we falling behind or are we leading? That's what we want to hear about, I think.
Sure. And yeah, Newmarket does use Ivy as well. They're the same kind of group. They got theirs the same as us, the same time frame. So we have talked to them a couple of times about the success of their program and tried to get the pricing of the different locations. We've gone around and gathered that as best we can, just to make sure we are on par or we're better. So that was kind of had questions throughout. Are there any more?
Okay.
Are you you actually alluded to street lighting, and I'm wondering with regard, I know that there was probably about 10 years ago or maybe less, a large LED street lighting retrofit program, and I'm wondering with that plus new builds for new subdivisions and so forth, where then there's like there's no need for a retrofit because that's going to be the standard. To what extent, is that having a positive effect overall, right? Is it like small, minuscule, or is that program, like, is it still ongoing in terms of retrofit?
There were a couple fine lines with where was the region, is this a regional asset on a road or not? But you're correct, the retrofit was completed. And that's part of what we do track is as our communities grow, more lights are being added, but they're LED from the start, they're not starting over, and that's part of the stuff we look for in the procurement process. Does that answer your question?
So, more or less. I guess that really represents the small.
Very small for the most part.
Because it's already a program that's largely completed, and there's very few of the old ones, and I think they might be regional to your
Correct,
character.
yes.
So,
Other questions?
Discussion points.
So I just would like to know where this is going, like where we're going. And as I say, I really do agree with Ron that in order to present it, it is to give representation in comparison to other people around us. But I'm still sort of at that point of what are we going to do with this? It's great. It looks good, but like right away, I come back to questions like, for instance, if we have this, and one about the tree canopy. I know it's not your fault. You're giving us information about it, but is that we're going to its energy is going to go up if we get rid of canopy. Okay. The other thing you mentioned, Ken, you mentioned about LED lights, is what types of lighting are being used? It's being used for cost efficiency, but what can be done to diminish the environmental impact of lighting here, and to bring those costs down? But again, that might not be in this portfolio, right?
Well, I don't know. Is that something that's, it seems to me you're the measuring,
Yeah, I don't.
data gathering kind of guy, and and that's the direction right now. We have to get the metrics. What you do with the metrics is what you're concerned about, and
That's what
everybody else would be. Sure, that's what impact this is going to have, and what decisions get made as a result of the data that you're collecting, because you'd hope the data is going to be used to make things more efficient and not only efficient, but it's also going to have a better carbon output.
But one of the points that you made was that there was an increase because of the new build in the hallways in the library. Okay.
Yep.
Where my head went right away is, okay, how can you decrease that amount? I mean, can you use lights that are motion detection? Can you use color warm, or can you put the shields so the light is going down, or tires or motions? Like there's a lot of other things that you can do to bring down that amount of electricity that's being used.
That's nice.
Yeah, so two parts to that. So with the expanded square footage, we're using the most efficient type that we can within reason. So we're already trying to build the most efficient, insulated, high efficiency equipment. If we were to build Town Square 10 years ago, that building would use a lot more energy than it currently does. So we're trying to keep it structured. So we're using as little as we can. We're trying to make it very efficient, and there's tons of very cool, the siding is extra layer shading. Like there's all these kind of cool design factors. And the second portion to kind of go back to what do we do with this information. So right now with facilities, for example, if I see a spike in energy use, I can go to the facilities manager and say, hey, I noticed this. And that flags them, oh, there's something wrong. There's a valve stuck open, just pumping out hot air or those kind of things. Or he'll come to me, hey, well, for the carbon budgeting stuff, we've had to now go and analyze the utility bills and estimate what reduction in cost is that now. So we can work collaboratively together through Red Screen. That's kind of where I come in. If they notice something's wrong, hey, Will, how long was this running like this for? I can go back and show them and they can move forward from that. So it's more of the collaborative element. As we expand, I hope to work fleet, natural capital asset, forestry, that kind of stuff to maybe not so much the forestry, there's not as much moving parts and utility consumption, but that kind of answer a little better.
Yeah.
Just to get feedback.
Angela?
Through you, Chair, I was going back to the slide where it said that the town of Aurora wants to achieve net zero by a certain date and the community to reduce by 80%. How are you going to get the community to reduce like their energy consumption? Or is it going to be programs like we saw in the last meeting, or is it going to be something that's forced on the residents, like a legislation, or how is that going to be achieved? Because there's a lot of really old houses in Aurora.
Yeah, through yeah, exactly. That's why we're looking into the home energy retrofit program, the loan programs. And these are, I believe, council set targets for the community. They've been approved in the community energy plan. So it's now up to town staff to help find ways to achieve that. I agree, it seems very overwhelming. That's why it's not net zero. That's very extreme.
Yeah.
But if the town can help, again, part of the questions for our the EV adoption, like what do we look into to help reduce our emissions? That'd be like a transportation portion. The loan program is just the start of our 25-year pathway.
Yeah.
I'm sure more will evolve. Could be the province comes out with, there's going to be a lot of moving parts.
Programs or something. Yeah.
So it's just a target that's been set and
Okay.
slowly work at it.
Hopeful.
Could be through, I'm just hopeful enough, but it could be through planning or policy, it could be through these programs, it could be a number of things. So that's kind of why this group's together as well. I believe we can all work together to find the best way to help the community.
And from a community standpoint, we have green building designs and things that planning can implement, but there may be a cost to doing that from an incentive standpoint to developers, or insistent on it.
Yeah.
Those are council decisions, kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, let's point for you, Mr. Chair. With the LED lights as well too, I think it was a program brought in a partnership with municipalities to lower the cost. But also there's also balancing, the needs for safety, road safety as well too. So if you turn off your lights in parks, then you're actually putting people at risk, and certainly, like parking lots and having minimal security lighting, like at a facility like this, right, where you want to make sure that you're making sure that if there's any malfeasance going on, that there's sufficient lighting in parking lots and to light up lobbies and things like that. So I know that that's also a consideration as well too, is balancing. So LED lights are really cost efficient. I don't like why, I don't like the stand, where they, that's just a personal thing, but I think there's also road safety and a public safety aspect and a secure property as well too, is my understanding.
And we do have a lighting bylaw that identifies a certain number of lumens and where it's directional and a variety of other things. And I think we're going to be moving towards that type of thing. We're down the pathway right now. We're at a point of no return with that, I think. So we're just going to continue on. Other questions? Comments? Do you want to lead us through these discussion points a bit to help us, so you can frame it and you can get some feedback based upon your framing of it?
Yeah, so we kind of had one as we presented, so I think we're okay with one. For number two, so the community energy plan, EV adoption, we had as 50% of our greenhouse gas reduction plan and especially like that transportation piece is heavy. People heat their homes and cool their homes, but they also drive around and burn fossil fuels. So questions for you is ideas on how we can improve community outreach or the EV charging program, if we'd like to see more chargers or more of a push from town staff to encourage people. Any thoughts?
Well, for EV adoption, I mean, that would be something that probably the municipal government or several municipal governments could get together and lobby the federal or provincial government to give incentives for EVs over and above what they're already doing. So I think on a municipal level, that's probably the only really thing you could do is to try and get, federal incentives or provincial incentives. And I don't know if Doug Ford is going to want to do anything like that.
You're talking about purchase incentives,
Yeah,
extend those.
because they had that, but I think they stopped it, didn't they?
Yeah.
The incentives.
Yeah, and this includes, we could look at for new builds or retrofits, including EV charger ready buildings. So if the conduit's all ready to go, it's much cheaper to have the conduit ready for the cables and wires versus trying to retrofit completely.
Well,
Dennis has had one.
Sorry, yeah, not to pass the buck or anything, but I feel like through the chair that there are already other potential partnerships that the town has. And I'm thinking about the event that you guys have every year with EVs and how I've seen the Electric Vehicle Society, and they're very attractive, kind of participate in there. I feel like I would be asking them what their thoughts are about how to increase that. Because I'm sure that they've thought about it more than I have personally.
So you're suggesting from a marketing standpoint, talk to the manufacturers and the dealers about what types of things work?
No, not to the manufacturers. I was thinking that there are other community organizations like the Electric Vehicle Society that has kind of like thought about this a bit more, trying to rally that maybe tap into their expertise, because I feel like there's already a partnership there, given that they get an invitation to participate in the Aurora electric vehicle event, right? And maybe they can provide the expertise of what they see at a community level to kind of increase adoption. So that would be my thought from the expertise standpoint. I think the thing for me is I know that I'm an EV owner. I know that what was kind of like what pushed me to get a vehicle. I'm one of the people that use the current city chargers or town chargers because I haven't installed a level 2 charger in my home just yet, right? And once again, is there an opportunity about kind of getting an idea of the profile of the electric vehicle users in Aurora to kind of say it's like, well, if everybody has a level 2 charger, maybe there's less need for public chargers, right? Or maybe there's a lot of people like myself where it's like, it's just a distance thing. I would use the town chargers more if they were closer to me type 2. So I feel like those might be two paths that could be explored to see, is there any traction to help with the next council decision? It's pretty good.
Did you have a graph up there that identified the number of electric vehicles in town?
I just had a province one. We do have in the Toronto Atmospheric Fund, they did release EVs in Aurora. I can find those numbers for you. I don't have them on hand right now.
I think that would be helpful to
It was
know,
quite a bit.
again, where we're on the curve, from a comparative standpoint.
I realized
Pardon me?
there's more in Aurora than I've seen a lot more.
All you have to do is look around and revolve like this, so.
I mean, your question was how do you improve? It would be to new developments, again, even if it's just a single house or a condo development, that it is part of that development that they have EV chargers. That's that's
Just from a public planning.
just from a public planning standpoint, right from the get-go. So that could be part of your, consideration for that. I was not aware of all those stations, so maybe a little bit more awareness of where they are.
Frankly, I don't know where they are either. I mean, there must be a map. you have a map somewhere and it's published, it's on the website, we need to draw attention to that, because you need to push as opposed to pull, so I think we need to
Maybe
push.
just one splash of EV owners, did you know? Boom, 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 boom.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it. Others on this? Yes?
So through the chair, once again, really milking this whole like profile thing. I feel like everybody's at different levels of EV adoption. And I feel like it's not a one size fits all, but kind of like trying to figure out what's that one important step for each segment of the population. So like, for example, people that are kind of just on the edge and kind of have like that range anxiety, what might be a town specific activity that might push them over the edge, right? For people like myself who have bought something that is not Tesla range and on the lower end, but I don't have level 2 charger, does the town think that pushing me towards a level 2 charger is the efficient way to go for GHG emission reduction? Or is it an awareness thing where it's like, actually, no, come use our things, right? And then for other higher income individuals and stuff, I feel like there might be one or two key actions that might push everybody along the spectrum one step towards where we want to go.
Most of us in this room are interested in the promotion of EVs, but there are barriers to entry. Intellectual ones, I suppose, or attitudes, opinions that change behavior. So it'd be interesting to see what people's attitudes are about the change over to hybrids or EVs, and what is a barrier for them, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about it. So that's the thought.
Through you, Chair, I think one of the main barriers, personally, I'm a Toyota owner. I've always owned Toyotas, and they last a really, really, really long time. I had a 15-year-old Highlander and a 17-year-old Tundra, and the only reason they're still not on the road is because people ran into them. So as a person who owns my vehicles till they basically go to the record, I think that would be the biggest barrier for the general population to go into an EV. If they have a vehicle that's in good condition and still running, they're not going to go to an EV just because it's an EV. I think that's probably from an economic standpoint, and also as a person that doesn't like throwing things away until they're completely used up. So that may be one of the bigger barriers, just for the general population.
Sure.
So profiles?
A profile right there.
Exactly. And it's kind of like,
that is.
Boomer mentality is still okay. I'm not gonna throw it out.
I think this was brought up in the last presentation with respect to when
The
people-
furnaces, yeah.
furnaces and things like that, is really where you have to get them is when they're going to get a new car.
A new one, yes.
I mean, we had those Hayatas and big Toyotas till they were 15, 16, 17 years old. The reason we got into is that once we couldn't use those anymore, what we were going to get, we both, getting retired. We're gonna, that's what we're gonna get.
Exactly.
So it's a lot has to do with timing,
Yes.
and the timing was good with respect to the rates.
And whether the repairs are gonna be more than it's worth.
That's right, that's right, yeah.
Thank you. Can we talk about, do you want to stick around for I think you should, the political ramifications, the jurisdiction on this, such as Bill 5 and 17 that have just recently received royal assent and has a tremendous impact on municipal and municipal control. I mean, these zones that have been not identified but are available. I mean, the zone could very well be under 401. And
Sorry, just want to clarify, are we moving on to new business or?
yes,
Oh, so
are we on
then-
new business? Are you still on your
We still
discussion
have-
block?
I still like, do we through Mr. Chair, Bill still has a few questions.
I'll move on to 4.
Oh, do you? Okay, great.
And it's more of a quick comment we can talk about, because we did talk a lot of, how do we best present progress? So if you have any comments, I know Dennis last year, based on the 2023 data, we wanted to see a better trend, a little more detail. So one thing I'm looking at doing this year, or we're looking at doing, is a better kind of portfolio, not a pamphlet brochure, but just like a broader, not spreadsheet either, but what's the best word for it? Infograph. Yeah, that's the one. More with everything's on one page, notes on the plans, where they came from, how this impacted. So that's one thing we're looking to do for this year's reporting to you guys. So if you have any other comments on progress or how to present.
Yes.
So through the chair, I always have comments, could talk about this for like hours and hours. But I think the biggest thing for me is I have a very short attention span, right? And even though I can appreciate the details, usually my eyes glaze over. So my thoughts whenever I'm thinking about this is really, when I do my personal work, I don't want to bury the lead. So whatever the TLDR is, too long to not read, kind of bring it to the forefront. And for, depending on what your message is, I feel like a lot for the monitoring right now, I think I've heard it around the table a couple times, is, so are we on track? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule, right? And then that's kind of like the thing that I really would love to hear. And then all the details supplement that and help you to tell the story. But really it's to supplement, not to take place. So I feel like those are the things that would really help me looking at a summary document as we see the progress or lack of progress moving forward.
Yeah, when presenting to, certain recommendations, when presenting to council, as I think, there were some meaningful things that came out when we were talking in between, which was that, what are you gonna do with this? It was how you work in cooperation with the other people in the department, with the department, and why this is important to track. So that was one point. I think this is great, it's lovely, but why is it important? So I think that's something that maybe need to bring forth, why it's important to track this, because we can do this and we're working in cooperation with the other department.
Yeah. That's great response to that.
Yeah. And I think the difference between corporate, Aurora, and the community is big.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the message out of here is that if you want to be an exemplar, you have to do everything to be an exemplar, and then you have to publish what you're doing to show everybody what the impact is and the value of it to them. So that was the only thing I had on it. And the other thing too is that we have discussions about incentives for homes, and I saw the most recent data about what our energy costs are on average here. The energy costs on average here, because we have large homes that have very low density. The higher the density is, then the less the energy consumption is. So if we're trying to maintain the heritage value of our community, if those heritage buildings are energy sucking buildings, then I'm hearing from people, from a council perspective, that people are saying, well, why are we spending money in any kind of an incentive program in order to upgrade these older buildings? Well, we have to. It's if we want to reach our targets. And I don't think that communication is well established out there yet. I live in an older home, but I've spent a lot of money trying to move new windows, move everything, so it's a mind thing. The community is a whole lot different than that. I mean, you guys, I think I want to congratulate you on doing all this data capture collection. I'm looking forward to the impact assessment on it and the interpretation of all this, and then how do we use it for ourselves. But I think the real important thing is that 80% out there of people in their homes they need help. So, you can't do it alone.
That's all I have. Comment on that, you're totally right with the corporate versus community. This was the corporate reporting. I wanted to throw in a couple community targets, but it's very different thing to deal with.
Different animal, different need. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will, I appreciate it. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes on I'd like to hear your views on the bills, and maybe you're not familiar with the bills.
My apologies.
Oh, sorry, we have to,
We need to vote on.
we need to vote on receiving.
Receiving and referring the
Yeah.
comments to staff,
Thank
rather
you.
than appropriate.
We have comments, no further comments then. So let's close it off. All in favor of the receipt of the report and the comments that we've had? All in favor? Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
So new business, do we have anything you want to talk about?
Yeah, just, I'm curious to know, so commencing in January, municipalities will no longer be responsible for collecting blue bin materials. And it'll be left, as a result of, I guess, corporations being responsible for what, and so it's going to be collected or processed at least by an organization called Circular Materials. So I did see something in the Aurora from the town and also Newmarket and so forth. So it's going to apply at very least to, well, I think province wide. So I just wanted to raise that because it's something that the town will obviously need to provide an education to within reason if there's going to be different materials going into the blue bin, but also more importantly for this for this committee, I'm kind of interested to know if that will have a net positive or a negative effect on diversion rates. Because whenever we talk about blue bin and green bin, and we talk about diversion away from landfill. So we're just putting that. There's nothing that we really need to discuss, but tonight. But maybe if we could get more information for our next meeting from somebody, whether it's
May I ask a group, is it the whole blue bin changeover and that discussion, would you like to have a fulsome report on that for September, October, certainly before January, so you can make comments and other issues like that?
For sure, yeah, I think that would be worthwhile.
Okay, Dennis?
Kind of piggybacking through the chair on Ken's comment, the idea that I feel like these are all kind of environmental, for lack of a better term, like threats based on a SWOT analysis, right? And I feel like these external threats, I'm thinking maybe if it could be a bit more encompassing to say how these changes might affect all the plans that we've made, right? And how it might affect things.
Positive or negative?
Positive or negative. Because I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about the closing of the beer stores and how the collection of empties might be impacted or not, right?
I've not seen that analysis myself
Yeah.
personally, and I would like to see what, I mean, some of these decisions are made not by us.
Exactly.
They're foisted on us, but they have ramifications, and we ought to know what those ramifications are.
And then kind of thinking about that, like external threats versus what we can control, right? I'm not sure if there's an opportunity in the modeling with any of our plans to kind of say, yeah, we're exactly on track with the things that we can control, but because of changes to external outside of us, this is why we're missing targets. I feel like if that's the story, that might be something useful to highlight as we move forward as well.
Right.
Sure.
Through you, Chair, with Ken's comment about the recycling changing and everything, I used to work for the City of Toronto in public works, and the city received a lot of revenue from selling their recycling, et cetera. Is Aurora going to be losing that revenue?
I don't know the model. I know we're going to a producer responsibility model, but I don't know what that means to your doorstep, nor to the businesses' dumpsters, nor to the economic model. And I think it'd be wise for us to learn about it, even though we may not have very much that we can do about it. But as you're trying to do, you're trying to document all this data. So how does it affect us? I think it's worthwhile coming into here, so we can give comments.
Yeah.
So. Other items?
Kind of in the same vein, but different, with respect to, what our community can do to stick to what we want in our projections for the environment, for electricity use, for all these environmental aspects from the policies that we have now and how. Like, I really liked Kathy Duncan's presentation, she did a great job. And I was wondering how that was actually received and if council was going to present to the government their perspective.
Well, I'm not sure the council has a perspective. You're talking about Bill.
Yeah.
That bill was tabled and it received royal assent in 49 days, which is almost unheard of in terms of driving that bus through. So no wonder we don't have a lot of information, nor do we have a lot of time to organize any oppositions to it. I know some mayors were giving letters, but I think that it deserves a dive, a deeper dive on it. And so I have a motion ready to go. So I don't know if it's going to make it on this cycle right now, but I'd like to have a motion in opposition to Bill 5.
I was wondering if that actually went. If that was being considered, you're saying that it was.
Well, it was left at the 11th hour, literally, on the other day. And there was a comment that the mayor should do something, but I don't know whether the mayor did do anything. And I don't know what was done because we don't, would you take something that Mayor Taylor has done and manipulate it yourself? I think we need some firm work on this. So I'm prepared to put a motion to have an opposition to it. If that's acceptable to you folks, if you're encouraging me to do that, but I'm just doing it because I believe in it. I see a lot of problems with it because I've read both.
Can we as a group give you our support, put it in the minutes?
Well, through Mr. Chair, I can document it in the minutes, the committee had a discussion on this.
I don't know, everyone else might not want to give,
Yeah,
And the meaning of the motion that's as proposed.
she is simply saying that the discussion regarding Bill 5 came forward and was discussed at the meeting, because we do read these. I read every minutes of every meeting because I try to be on them, so I learn what's behind the scenes of it. And you can't make a recommendation. You can comment with me that you're hoping that council would either create a report or identify some opposition. How would you do that, Nishida? What would you say?
Well, through Mr. Chair, it would be documented as the committee had a discussion regarding those bylaws and concerns regarding it, and then hoping that,
Encourage council to formulate
formulate
yeah, but the formulate.
well, more than that, to put forward something where, along the lines of expressing the concerns of the province. And if I may,
Sure.
through you, Mr. Chair, the details of the regulations are not released yet, so that's also.
That's right. Yeah. So we've had the discussion. You have concerns. You want the council to know your concerns. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one thing that I think that the C5 or whatever the bill's called, it's going to affect the town of Aurora's resiliency plan, because I personally live in an EP zone because I have a stream on my property. Originally, certain areas were not allowed to be developed because of a zoning, like a watershed protection, EP because of streams and wildlife, some, endangered salamander or something. So for the town of Aurora, even as a resident, it's going to affect me if federal development can go wherever it wants. It's going to affect your long-term resiliency plan as well, because areas are going to be developed that shouldn't be developed to, stop flooding or whatever, and when we have, more severe weather in the future.
Yeah, the bill as I've read it, can override heritage areas. It's changing the Endangered Species Act. So it's a very large bill that has very few words, but has a lot of power behind it. And I think that's what most of the confusion and the opposition to it is. Dennis, you have a comment? You had a hand up? It's you.
So we share kind of following up, because I'm a data person, I look to data solutions, and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here to tweak the previous modeling and plans to kind of see if the models can comment on this. And the idea that if this comes into effect and it's used that affects X percentage of whatever of our plan, is there a point where we say that it doesn't matter what else we're doing, we are not going to meet our targets, right? So I'm not sure if there's an opportunity through the modeling that's already been done to be updated with these new external quote unquote threats from SWOT analysis, or if we just have to wait till the next update of the plan for it to be.
Yeah, that was kind of my comment, and worrying about, the long term.
Yeah.
When this bill came in, this is what happened. And are we able to capture all that? And I'm happy that you are saying, yes, we can capture that. We can look at, here's what happened here, and here's what we've done in this thing. Here's the impact of it, because they're really all looking at positive impact. Right? Did you have a hand?
I guess with the bill, my discussion is how much can we keep to what our town's laws and bylaws are. That's the thing is it the Ontario government coming in and saying, doesn't matter what your policies are, it's how much control can we have and how much control can we fight to hold on to.
I think your comment is that you're also concerned about the overreach of the provincial government into our municipal bylaws.
Yeah.
With respect to planning heritage endangered species.
Right.
What words did you?
Yes.
But that says something, that this group of people that have expertise in this is concerned about the overreach and the possible impact that it'll have on the environment. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So just wondering, and just as part of the discussion, is that does this essentially give more power to developers to take the municipality to the Ontario Land Tribunal to override, a secondary plan and decisions, right? That's conform, so obviously there's there's the secondary plan, which I guess applies to the municipal or lower tier municipalities, which we are supposed to be to the region, but I'm thinking, because we are part of obviously the watershed for Lake Simcoe, and so there's certain regulations about not building on the floodplain and the Species Act and so forth. But my concern too is, aside from the watershed, is the Oak Ridges. Which where it's more kind of Richmond Hill, but still has some bearing on us as well too. And again, if decisions are overturned in favor of developers at OLT, what does that necessarily mean? Now, obviously, we're having to build, housing and greater density and so forth. So, but in terms of what does that mean in terms of planning, in terms of water, wastewater capacity? But we're already sort of there's not enough. I think that we're reaching capacity in terms of the New York Region modeling, in terms of the twinning of the Dufferin Creek system, right? And we already know that, Georgina and East Gwillimbury and Aurora as well too, our wastewater treatment is like that whole model has changed. So now, what does that mean for development? So there's so many moving parts here as well too, in terms of our housing strategy, our environmental strategy, and so Bill 5 just has, I think the fear is what it doesn't say as much as what it does say at this point.
Yeah, so I think she is making the comments here that this group is highly concerned about the impact of Bill 5 on our heritage properties, our endangered species, our watershed, all of the things that this environmental group should be concerned about.
Our families.
You're simply saying we are concerned about this. And that's let the council decide what they're going to do about your concern, but at least it's in writing, so. Thanks for that.
Very
Victor, you've been very quiet up there. I haven't seen a hand. I try to keep my my eye on you. Have I missed a hand up? No? Okay. Do you have any comments to say? I know when I'm on there and I'm the only, okay, great. Anything else that we want to discuss here?
Well, I wonder if it's coming in September that we can look at each of these different areas and see how that, be it the tree canopy, be it lighting, be it the watershed, be it storm sewers.
I should look at what the pending list is,
Yes.
what's happening out of the town vis-a-vis what's coming up next, and see how we can insert these things in. So if we can make that comment as well, that we'd like to see a pending list of items that will be coming forward to the environmental committee, that would be helpful.
Just our vendors, no pending list per se, but if there is a topic of interest, that's me, Mr. Chair, that committee wishes to express that they can send that to staff. And then staff can provide and comment on it or information about online or provide some details.
Well, we talked about the blue bin and the producer responsibility, that's gotta be high on it.
Yeah.
We talked about
The tree canopies.
the tree canopy, so, okay, it's in the comments, it's for staff to take a look at.
Yes.
And
Through you, Chair, Mr. Chair, the other thing that I think should be of concern for our group is the infrastructure in Aurora, and it doesn't seem to be keeping up with climate change. For example, there was a thunderstorm last summer where all of the parking lot at the No Frills Plaza flooded, Wellington Street flooded, parts of Yonge Street flooded. So it's obviously an indication, even though it may have been a very severe thunderstorm and a lot of water came out of it at the same time, our infrastructure should be able to handle that. So obviously it's not. If the water is overwhelming our sewer systems, then it might be time to look at upgrading those sewer systems.
so the comment is because of climate change, because of the one storm in 100 years is now turning into one storm every 5 years. Do we have the capacity
Yes.
to respond to what do we call them?
Resiliency.
It's not a storm, there's a word for it, for these kinds of storms, these unusual storms.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's worth them letting us know what's happening.
Because we spent $70 million on a town square, but then you've got Wellington Street flooding one of our main intersections. There needs to be something looked at.
Just to that point, so there's some infrastructure that's regional and some infrastructure that's town. So Wellington would be portion of Wellington as region and portion of it as town. So there's a little bit of a blurry.
So how do you?
She was gonna say, well, the committee expressed concerns about the effect of climate change and storms on not only water and flooding, but also we're going through this whole thing on windrows and discussion of snow clearing, salt mitigation, et cetera. So those kinds of things framed around climate change is really an important comment, because we are here trying to get to net zero, but essentially because of the climate and environment.
And perhaps just going that step further is asking the town to support those developments or the new infrastructure that supports the change. And not bringing their plans using the 100-year model.
Right, yeah, fair enough.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a, a climate adaptation plan, which does consider those variables, those 100-year storms, and we're working with our asset management working group to try and find the best model to make sure we are preventative maintenance and checking these things to make sure that these storms we're following climate change. So
Good topic to learn about here, I think.
And that was I can note that for the talk there. Great. Like that.
Sorry, maybe Mr. Chair, one more for making a list actually, which I suspect we are. The whole notion of invasive species, specifically, I don't think I'm pronouncing this right, Pegmetis.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's choking out natural water courses, so that might also have an effect as well too. I know that there was a herbicide program throughout the town, but it's getting, I think it's getting ahead of not only us, but everywhere else. Right.
Okay.
Sorry, just through you, Mr. Chair, hence, I've noticed along water courses especially that there's a lot of invasive species that are on public land, like especially walking through Fleury Park, there's buckthorn everywhere. And also on private land, I was wondering if there's any program that the town has for private residents that have an issue with invasive species.
Yeah, getting back to our corporate versus community, I mean, we can do all we want corporately on the lands that we own and try to do what we need to do about Phragmites, et cetera. But if they're allowed to spread everywhere else, do we have a community plan for invasive species to incentivize people to identify them, but also to eliminate them on their properties? Good point. Love it. It's 8:35, folks. It's not a hockey game to go to.
I'm gonna lose anyway.
There's a basketball game in Town Square.
Oh, yes, the Indiana is playing, okay, so, yeah, so we better adjourn just in order to do that. So can I get a motion to adjourn from someone? Ken? Jason, okay. Victor, maybe we should just have you second it. There we go. So he was actually here. Thanks.
So just a note, our next meeting is not September, but actually October 20th. So after this, we only have 2 more meetings, October 20th and December 15th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. Unless needed.
Unless needed.
Unless needed. Something else up, and then do it. All in favor? We all, yeah,
Right.
we, okay. All in favor?